Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Ahsoka Season 1, Episode 4, Fallen Jedi. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Ahsoka. So I have to start with a spoiler warning for Season 1, Episode 4. If you have not seen up to this point, you will not want to watch this video, otherwise some things will be spoiled for you. So I've been loving this show so far, and I've heard a lot of negative critique, or maybe so-so critiques, and I tend to not personally agree with them. I'm actually loving this show, but this episode takes the cake. This episode was amazing. I think this episode was some of the best Star Wars I've seen in years. And it seemed very, very quintessential Star Wars. And really, it's like, has like all these amazing lightsaber battles, which honestly, like, we don't really get that many great lightsaber battles in Star Wars. I mean, battles that mean something, that they come along with a great story, which the prequels didn't really have that much. Maybe Revenge of the Sith did, because the stories weren't so great in the prequels, and the original series didn't have, the original trilogy didn't have that many lightsaber battles in it. So to get an episode like this that has these great, powerful lightsaber battles with very interesting characters and the very interesting story, I think is it's just amazing. It's just, this is pretty much, like, so far, I mean, it could change, but this is pretty much exactly what I was hoping and praying for when I heard there would be an Ahsoka show, and why this is the show I've been most highly anticipating ever since it was announced a couple years ago, even before I saw Clone Wars and Rebels, but especially after I saw Clone Wars and Rebels. Now, the reason why this episode works so well is because it's not just because there's action scenes, because I talked about before and a lot of other stuff, if you just have action for the sake of it, I'm not into it. But the character stakes were so high, particularly with the tension was actually perfect, because not only this, but you could draw off of what you knew from The Mandalorian Season 3, which again I like better than most people did, where they were hinting at this resurgence of the Empire, and they're making it clear that it all sort of falls on Thrawn, and that Thrawn is the missing piece that could actually restart the Empire and start another war. And them finding Thrawn all hinges on this one moment in this episode where they had the map that's going to lead them to Thrawn, and Ahsoka and Sabine have to go try to find it, and you see like the the hyperdrive thing on Morgan's ship sort of ticking as it gets closer to leaving. There was like an amazing way to ramp the tension, and the way they intercut that with Ahsoka and Sabine trying to get to it but getting stopped by having to do these fights. This to me was one of the best examples of high tension suspense with it combined with great acting, great character stories, and great action fight scenes that I remember seeing in a very, very long time. Like, I was on the edge of my seat. But not only that, but I'll get to the end of it later, but the end pays off in such a huge way, in many ways, actually. But first of all, we get the conflict with Sabine and Ahsoka, sort of. I wouldn't, maybe conflict's the wrong word, but we get the situation with them where Ahsoka tries to lay out the stakes to Sabine at the very start of the episode. Like, look, we may have to, make a very hard choice. we may have to destroy the map, meaning that we will never, never find Ezra. Now, see, that's how Ahsoka recruited Sabine in the first place, with the lure of we're going to go find Ezra. But now she's kind of changing the stakes a bit and saying, no, it's not about finding Ezra. Now it's about stopping Thrawn. And that is more important than finding Ezra. And she does not readily accept that. And Ahsoka tries to reaffirm that to her, to make it clear that these are extremely high stakes, and that, although it would be unfortunate to leave Ezra missing forever, it might be a necessary evil. And you can see that Sabine doesn't really accept that. And eventually when Sabine says, no, it might not come to that. No, it's not going to come to that because, she wants everything to work out. She wants to stop Thrawn and find Ezra. But Ahsoka's like, I think it might already have. And again, this is sort of her Jedi wisdom coming in, and Sabine kind of just changes the subject and like, oh, let's get going and let's stop them. And I think that's beautiful setup for what would come later, and then you get sort of more high, sort of raising the tension scenes, such as with the droid. I kind of forget his name sometimes, but he, with him trying to repair the ship and then getting attacked by that assassin droid, that was pretty tense, and then they, Ahsoka and Sabine came out and found them and saved them or whatever, which was, I like that. That was a pretty good way to start the tension. But then you knew that Shin and Merrick were out there looking for, were going to the ship to stop Sabine and Ahsoka from coming. And so when they encounter them, and you get those four pair off to fight each other, like, this was amazing. Like, I think I watched this scene several times. It's just the choreography and the tension and the music, and again the ways that they're cut with Morgan getting her ship ready to leave. Like, it was one of the most I don't know if I would use the word beautiful, but one of the most intense, like, well done sequences in, like, especially if you talk about lightsaber battles in Star Wars. Like, this is one of the best, easily one of the best. And especially love the moment. Like, the moment is so good when the Merrick is doing his Inquisitor thing, which I always thought the Inquisitors were a bit silly with their spinning lightsabers. And he does this thing with the spinning lightsabers where it spins very fast, and Ahsoka just, stays calm and still and calculates, and just with one swift blow cuts him in half. That was just that was so good. It was so good. It reminds me of the best of sort of the tense, like, and I want to throw this out there even though it may seem out of place, Tarantino films, but those are sort of based off of samurai films as well, which is what Star Wars is mainly based off of, and definitely what the Ahsoka series has a very strong feeling towards. God, it was just, that was just so satisfying. And then Merrick splits in half, and this gray smoke comes out. And I love that this blows the theory that Merrick was like Ezra, or some people were saying maybe it was Kanan, or whatever. Some people had crazy theories, but the most prominent one was Ezra, which I hated. I hated that theory with a passion. So I was so happy that didn't turn out the case. But apparently, and I've watched some other videos that kind of explain this, that apparently the Merrick was basically the Night Sister using their magic to, bring this ghost thingy back to life, and that's basically what he was. So he could appear actually again, for that matter. I think that's way cooler, and it being Ezra makes way more sense. But then that gives him an interesting thing, because Sabine is clearly outmatched with Shin, because Shin already killed her once, or at least defeated her easily once. And so for her to just tell Ahsoka to go, get the map and she'll take care of Shin, that's a big deal, because she knows she's outmatched. In fact, the thing that Shin says to her is like, that was a bad move, that was a bad idea, or that was a big mistake, or something like that, which is true. And so they gave the word that lying so much more weight, so much more power, and you felt that sort of sense of doom. But Sabine is doing what is necessary for the mission, because I think they know that Balon would be waiting for them there, and I think Sabine would know that she certainly wouldn't be a match for him. So it needs to be Ahsoka. And that Ahsoka shouldn't waste her time trying to help Sabine, because time is of the essence. So that was good. And I liked how, further with the Sabine fight with Shin, that we had this moment where we do see once again she's outmatched. She brings out the lightsaber again and clearly is losing. And then she loses her lightsaber, and we had the moment where she puts out her hand like she's trying to use the Force to grab the lightsaber. And I remember I was thinking to myself, I was like, oh, is this going to work as sort of foreshadowing in the previous scene where she was trying to do it and wouldn't work, but now it's dire need? Because this is a common trope you see in a lot of movies. In fact, I think they did this with Rey in the sequel trilogy too, where they try to do something, but when something is really dire and they desperately need it, when they're in the middle of a fight or something, it works. But they didn't do that trope, and I love that. Instead, it was just misdirect, where she shot a missile from her palm or whatever, that caught Shin off guard, because Shin thought she was trying to use the Force, and like, oh, you have no power. That was fucking brilliant. That was so good. And then you have Ahsoka show up to take on Balon. And the band, oh god, this character of Balon is so good, and Ray Stevenson plays him so well. You get the sense of this character that he has a sense of honor, but he has a goal that's just different from Ahsoka's. And it is interesting how he's kind of taunting her about her abandoning Anakin, which is something that does bother her, and he sort of then taunts her about how you're just like your master, you just bring death and destruction, which I'm not sure exactly what he's getting at there, but it's very interesting. And it's very interesting that's the sort of, banter that they have while they're fighting. It feels very Star Wars-y to me, like classic Star Wars. And goddamn, yeah, that whole thing was just so amazing. And then of course, let me address Balon first, because I've heard complaints about Balon and Shin being like, oh, we don't understand his motivation. What's his motivation? There's people using it as like criticism, like leveled at the show, being like, oh, the show's not so good because who is this dark Jedi? Why is he, seem to be working for the dark side? What's his motivation? The show's not good because it's not explaining this to me. And I really highly disagree with that line of thinking, like, fully don't get it, actually, because yes, I am curious to know what his motivations are, but I am trusting that the show will explain it to me when it's good and ready to. And I have no issue with that. Now, if we get to the end of the season or the end of the show, and it hasn't explained what his motivations are, why he's doing it, then I will agree with those criticisms. And only then will I agree with them. But I think it's jumping the gun and being kind of like wanting everything now, to be saying stuff like that when there's only been 4 episodes so far. Now, granted, it's half the season, but still, it's only half the season. And I think they're giving us enough of these characters within the stories to fulfill this part. Now, I am still wondering, and definitely the banter and the way he behaves here is definitely fleshing him out more. You're starting to understand more of the type of character he is. You get a really good grasp. He's actually like a really, really great villain, especially compared to, Mandalorian or freaking sequel trilogy and stuff like that. I would say, so far, I've only seen half the show, but he's turning out to be one of the best villains since freaking, I don't want to say it, but since Darth Vader. Really. But, I would like to know his motivation. Yes, but I trust that the show will divulge this when it's right for the show to do so. So that doesn't bother me, and I think it's silly. A lot of the things people complain about the show I think are silly, but that's just me. Anywho, so that fight was amazing, and then you have Shin show up. I believe that was after Ahsoka grabbed the map. Now, here's the only one minor little nitpick complaint type thing that I have. And when I say minor, I mean minor. It's an extremely minor one. Does not affect my enjoyment of this episode in the least. But I did kind of wonder, and maybe, again, this is such a minor complaint because maybe it was just the heat of the moment thing with Ahsoka. But I do kind of wonder why she didn't use the Force to grab or to deflect that map rather than grabbing it. Now, maybe she wasn't aware it would burn her hand and injure her so badly. Again, so that's why it's a very minor complaint. So maybe I get that. Maybe she just on instinct grabbed it because that seemed the most logical thing, or just acting on instinct instead of just grabbing it with her hand. But in retrospect, though, knowing that it injured her so badly that it allowed her to be defeated, you kind of think, well, maybe she should just use the Force to deflect it away or something. But maybe she would have if she knew that would have injured her so much. So I don't know. As I said, extremely minor complaint. That actually can be explained away. But anyway, that was interesting. And again, it was such a powerful, suspenseful scene where, Balin was just like, that was unwise, and just starts going after her, and you can see how visibly injured she is and how it's really affecting her fighting. And then I love when Shin showed up, her first reaction was to go Sabine, to assume that Sabine was dead, or that Shin defeated her. And I think that's a logical assumption, a natural assumption, because Shin already defeated her once and nearly killed her. So that actually makes sense to assume that. And then how she uses the Force so powerfully to throw Shin across the rock and knock her out was awesome. But again, she kind of showcased to me that she's very powerful with the Force, so she could have used it to destroy the map, or at least grab the map rather than her hand. But again, it's a minor thing. But then when Sabine shows up, you see the relief on Ahsoka. She's really... I think they do a good job of expressing how relieved she is to see that she's alive. But then she goes straight to business to destroy the map, because she realizes the situation that they're in, that She is now outmatched by Balin because of her injury, and so she realizes that the best, and that she knows that Sabine would be no match for Balin. So she knows that only this is the worst case scenario. That hard choice is now having to be made. She has to destroy the map, but of course, she hesitates. She threatens to destroy the map to Balin, but that doesn't stop him from, in quotation marks, air quotes, killing Ahsoka, or at least knocking her off the cliff. And so that was intense, and then you get this was such a great scene. I'm sorry, this scene was amazing. The acting, the writing, it was just, I could feel the intensity of the scene where Balin goes to Sabine and is like, really like talking to her, and like some people compare this as turning to the dark side, but I wouldn't necessarily call this Sabine turning to the dark side. Some people point out she's not a Force user, so she can't really turn to the dark side the way a Jedi would. But regardless, I still wouldn't call this her turning to the dark side. Scene. This is more of her giving in to her. Wanting to help her friend or be reunited with her friend. And again, a lot of people make comparison to this, and Anakin's turn to the dark side was all about his attachment to Padme. And I think there's something very loosely and vaguely there, but I think specifically it's a little bit different, because Anakin's attachment to Padme was shown to be somewhat unhealthy. Even though they were in love and they had a child together, he was a bit obsessive over her and thinking and being being driven mad by the fact that she might die or whatever. Whereas I think Sabine's relationship with Ezra is a lot more healthy. So I think there is a difference there as well. Just my opinion. But I can definitely see the similarities and why people draw them. But I still think it's kind of a different situation. And it was truly intense because I didn't know what she was going to do, if she would. And the way that they just slowly etched her hand closer to his until she finally put it in his hand. Like, that was a shocking moment to me, even though I knew that was a strong possibility. It wasn't a certainty, so it was still a powerful moment when she did that. And God, yeah, it's just so good. And then of course Shen comes back and starts force choking her, but Balin again, they show his character, show that he's honorable, saying that I will honor my word. Stop choking her. I gave my word to her, and I'm going to keep it. And it's interesting, he says, unlike what your master did, or your former master, I think, referring to Ahsoka. So, but this is referring to stuff that happened off screen again. And I think they mentioned somewhere in this episode that her family on Mandalore died because Ahsoka wouldn't help her again, and this is referring to shit off screen, so that kind of annoys me. But still very interesting. So we have her show up with her ship, and a lot of people have been criticizing her for bringing her son along to a very dangerous situation. But I don't know. I feel like he's like a Force user. He's kind of a protege. He's more than just her son. And so to me, it kind of makes sense. But if you want to call it bad parenting, I can't really argue with that. But it does make sense to me that she would do it. And of course, her defying orders is very cliche. And had that dude from Mandalorian shows up. It's good to see him. They all go off on that adventure together. And that was cool. And I thought it was added to the tensions because you knew they were coming. It's like, are they gonna stop Morgan and the bad guys from leaving? And they don't. And that was kind of shocking that they were building them up to stop them to do it, and they failed to do it, and that was really, really intense. But then of course we get the big reveal. Big reveal that, and I love the sort of way they blend this scene where they go to the cliff where Ahsoka fell off of, and they show the ocean waves crashing, and it blends to the ocean waves and fades into the waves of the weird thingy, I don't know what they called it, that Ahsoka was lying on. Which was, god damn, that was just such a perfect transition, in that she is in the world between worlds. Now, I watched a couple of reviews where they said, oh, well, it could be the world between worlds, or it could be this Jedi afterlife, or it could be this, or it could be that, or we don't know if it's the world between worlds. And I'm thinking to myself, it's the fucking world between worlds. Of course it is. Now, if it isn't, I would be heavily disappointed. I mean, if they're trying to say some Jedi afterlife or something else, I'd call bullshit on that and be like, it's clearly presented the exact same way that the world between worlds was in Rebels. Now, if you haven't seen Rebels, you don't know what the world between worlds is. I am not going to explain it in this video. I'm sure there's other videos that would do a better job. But it's this weird sort of realm, I guess you would call it, that exists outside of space and time. It's what allowed Ezra to save Ahsoka's life, save her from Darth Vader killing her in Rebels. And because he, kind of pulled her from time into the space. Yeah, but anyway, and that's definitely it. And then and then we hear Anakin, of course, and then we see Hayden Christensen. It was so good, and I'm dying to see what they're gonna do next. And it's so fascinating to see these two characters reunited. And if you've seen the Clone Wars, that definitely has a lot more weight to it. And of course we know this is post Return of the Jedi, so this is post his redemption. Now, people are asking, is he a Force Ghost? Because he should be a Force Ghost, because he's dead at this point. But if they're in the world between worlds, this could be something weird or different. And I've heard theories about why she would be in the world between worlds, because of having to do with the, what they called, the mother or the sister or whatever from that weird episode of Clone Wars I didn't really like that much, but she saved her life to put her energy force, and maybe that's what drew her to this world. And but I don't know. And I think if they did go that way, though, this would be all the more confusing for those who haven't seen Clone Wars or Rebels. So I don't know if they should, but maybe they will. But yeah, it's fucking brilliant. Like, it's so good, so fascinating to see this, and it is such a perfect way to end this episode. Such a great episode, such a beautiful episode. I've just been gushing about it because, God, I think it's so good. So anyway, my rating for Falling Jedi out of 10 is a 10, the best. Yeah, I think this is an amazing episode of television, one of the best I've seen in a very long time. Definitely one of the best pieces of Star Wars I've seen in a long time. I just love this show. I think this show is just everything I wanted from Star Wars. Andor, that was kind of boring and not really anything like Star Wars, not what I want from Star Wars. And it had a lot of unnecessary storylines and unnecessary characters that bored the shit out of me. I think this is a billion times better than Andor. Just my personal opinion. And yeah, God, if they stick the landing to the show, which I'm really hoping they will, this could be one of the best pieces of Star Wars ever. It could. I really could. I really am enjoying the hell out of this. But we'll see where it goes. But God, next week's episode, I'm so excited for it. It's like I have to wait a whole week for it. But yeah, this was so good. Anyway, that is it for my review of Falling Jedi. I shall be back to cover next week, next episode of Ahsoka, which I'm goddamn waiting for. I will be back to cover that next week, so be sure to check out my channel for that, and check out my channel as I cover many other videos, mostly on Star Trek, covering Star Trek Next Generation. At the moment, we'll be covering Lower Decks when that starts, and many other videos on other shows as well, so be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that, and thanks a lot for watching.